Welcome back, Legion. How to know when to change your program. This is a topic that I want to discuss today because I find there's kind of two camps here. There's the never change and never get better camp, and then there's the changing too often and never knowing whether something's working camp. So I just want to kind of put my opinion out there, my little spin on this. All right. The difference between training and working out is that training has the long game in mind. It is many single sessions put together to achieve a certain goal or outcome. While a workout it's more about the here and now. How much can I do right now? There's nothing wrong with working out and it certainly has its place. Although if you're after long-term athletic success, you need to be thinking longer term than just a single workout. We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, but a habit. Aristotle. Love this quote. Okay, so the quote couldn't be more accurate for anyone trying to achieve long-term success. You often hear, stay the course, trust the process. These are the quotes coaches use day in, day out to try and build buy-in from their athletes to help them see the bigger picture and stay engaged for long periods of time. Although, how long should you wait to see results? How do you know whether the training is working? When is it time to change things up? Fortunately, there are some answers to these questions. These are my opinions. First thing, how long is a piece of string? So how long should you train before you make a change? This is hard to know 100% and will vary from each person and situation to situation. And unfortunately, sometimes in sport, we don't know if something's going to work until it's too late. For example, you work really hard throughout the preseason, it might be a 12-week long preseason. You feel like you've made some really good gains and the team is feeling really confident going into the season. And then you start the season and whack, 3 losses in a row, we're in a rut. And it feels like it's all been a bit of a waste. So on the other hand, if you don't give yourself, enough time to learn and adapt to new skills, game plays or the training program that might be a gym program or a running program, then you might not see any change at all. So if you're consistent with your training and skills and your learning process, then generally, 4 weeks is probably long enough to see some change. However, it may not be long enough to see kind of the final result that you're after. So this is the thing when it's really hard to say that there's a specific time frame to put on things because certain things change at certain rates as well. You can obviously learn different things at different speeds. So it's really hard to know, but my point here is that if you don't spend long enough trying to learn and adapt to the intervention that you've created, then it's going to be very hard to measure progress. So, a good example here is, if nothing has changed in that time, it's good to see or use other markers of progress. So, if you're playing sport, it might be measuring fitness, it might be measuring sleep quality, it might be measuring, appetite, it might be measuring stress levels, it might be measuring recovery status. Like, if you've made progress in some areas and not others, and it might not even be the main area that you want to make progress in, I would still stay the course. Something is working. Something about your intervention is working. And it might just need a little bit more time before the actual outcome that you're after comes about. Okay, so another way to help us make these decisions is through KPIs. All right? So if you've played sport, you've probably heard this term before, but KPIs are key performance indicators. These are the metrics you need to make decisions on whether you're achieving or at least heading in the right direction. These may be skills related to, the actual sport itself. It might be related to gameplay outcomes. It might be related to statistics. It might be related to fitness measures. Either way, they're areas that are deemed important, and results in these areas will lead to, the final desired outcome. That's what your key performance indicators are. So you as an athlete, you can do this for yourself. It could just literally be the goals or the areas that you need to work on or are working on, and just some things that you can track and measure along the way. Then you can kind of decide, all right, if you ain't assessing, you're guessing. So using these KPIs, let's test periodically. Testing and assessing your KPIs at regular intervals is a great strategy to measure progress. So this can highlight, what is working and what may need tweaking. Again, be careful not to overdo it or testing too frequently. You need to give the intervention long enough to yield results. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. I love this old adage. Coaches and athletes often get caught up with what's not working and rarely take the time to step back and appreciate what is working. If 90% of your training is working and yielding the desired results, then why not look at why that's working so well in the first place? Have a look at the things that you're doing right and how you can potentially influence some other areas or get a little bit more out of some other areas that aren't working. You may find you already have the answers, to your problems. On the flip side though, if only 10% of your training is effective, you need to look at what you might be missing. So assess what your, physical, mental, social components are made up of. What is the entire scheme looking like? And then you can kind of relate that back to your training specifically. How much sport-specific skill work are you doing compared to your general fitness work? Like runners run, jumpers jump, lifters lift, throwers throw, kickers kick. There's only one way to get better at your sport, and that's to practice your sport. So sport-specific training should make up a large portion of your training. This is with the exception of off-season training, where you might reduce the amount of specific skill stuff that you do. Then everything else kind of like fills these small little gaps that are helping you to this ultimate kind of goal. I guess what I'm trying to say here is just make sure that whatever interventions you're putting into play, that they are having a direct impact on your actual sports performance or whatever you're trying to achieve, whether it's getting bigger, getting leaner, trying to get fitter, whatever outcomes you want to achieve. Just make sure that you're actually working on the things that will help you achieve them. Okay, the last one is the time to make change. So when should you actually pull the trigger? If you start going backwards as a whole, now this doesn't necessarily mean in one area, but as a whole kind of intervention, if you're going backwards, this is probably when I'd be thinking about making some changes. So plateauing doesn't necessarily mean that you need a complete overhaul, rather that you should actually just change one thing at a time and see if that can't kick some progress back into gear. However, if you start seeing negative effects from your intervention, so from the training that you're doing, then it's probably time to reassess. Don't spend too much time on this. The longer you spend going backwards, the harder it's going to be to move forwards. So this is, again, where we come back to our KPIs and, measuring and assessing often enough to make decisions at the right times. Because if you spend too long going backwards without you actually knowing that you're going backwards, that's missed time, and time is super precious. I feel like we can all appreciate that at the moment, and you want to make the most of your time. And the best way to do that is to know whether you're actually making progress or not. If you've made a plan, you need to give it enough time to work. Just keep an eye on your KPIs, and if you're not making progress or going backwards, then yes, you need to adjust the plan. Never throw the baby out with the bathwater though, okay? Just make small adjustments. If they yield results, then you can move forward from there. If nothing's working, then potentially you need to look at outsourcing your help. You need to get someone external to the situation to have a look at it and maybe implement some different strategies that haven't already been conceived in that environment. Okay, guys, hopefully that was clear. It's a challenging concept, knowing when to change your program and knowing when to stay the course. But hopefully if you use some of these strategies that I've talked about, it would make your decision making a lot easier and a lot clearer to know whether it's time to change your program or not. Okay, thanks for that, guys.